Welcome, welcome. Good morning and good afternoon and good evening. I know we have a few friends joining us from South America and Indonesia and Poland. So it's so great to have such a wide variety of people joining us today. While we wait for all of our schools to come in, I do have a couple trivia questions just to warm us all up and give us some time to get everything set up. So I invite everybody here today, even our presenters, you are all welcome to participate in this trivia as well. You guys can just practice typing your answers in the chat. So for the first one, does anybody know what the theme of International Women's Day is for this year? Is it I Am Generation Equality? Is it Embrace Equity, Women in Leadership, or Inspire Inclusion? So I want you to go ahead and try typing it in the poll or the Zoom chat. Or if you're on YouTube, type your answers in YouTube. My colleague Sarah will send them over to us to our schools joining from Peru that are on YouTube. You guys can go ahead and let us know. What do we think? A, B, C, or D? Anyone? Do we have any? Oh, we got a couple. Okay. We're thinking embrace equity. Now, if anybody came to our event last year, we also let you know what the theme was for last year. So if you remember that one, it's actually one of the answers on here. So last year's theme was actually be embrace equity. This year's theme, inspire inclusion. So good job. Awesome. Our speaker, Sarah, did her research before she got here today. She knew it was inspire inclusion. Let's just do a couple more before we get started. When was International Women's Day adopted by the United Nations? Was it in the 30s, 40s, 60s, or 70s? So the United Nations actually recognizes this International Women's Day. When do we think that happened? Seeing a mixture, C, B, 40s, 60s. Maya's thinking it might be D. Good mixture on this one. Okay, this might be a hard one for you guys. Correct answer is D, 1975. So it wasn't until 1975 that the United Nations actually recognized this important day. Okay, last one. On average, women make how many cents compared to $1 for the same job as a man? So you'll notice I put a picture of a glass ceiling here if anybody knows that analogy. So if me and a man were doing the same job on average, how much money would I be making? 57 cents, 78 cents, 84 cents, or 92 cents? And I have some good news. I've done this trivia question before, and it's actually slowly going up every time that I do this trivia question. So that's awesome to see that we're getting a little bit of an increase. I'm seeing some C's, a couple A's, a lot of C's. A lot of us are thinking 84 cents. Seeing a 78 cents. All right, let's see what it is. Correct answer is 84. So we're not quite at that equal 100 cent, $1 to $1, but we're getting closer. So one of the big things that we're working on for International Women's Day. So I want to welcome everyone here, to those of us joining live on Zoom and live on YouTube, and those of us that are maybe watching this a little bit later because it's 2 o'clock in the morning where you are. It's so nice to have you here and celebrating this important day with us. Before I actually get started with the live event, I wanted to take a moment to do a land acknowledgement. So I am joining from Amiskwaciwâskahikan, which is colonially known as Edmonton, Alberta, and is found on Treaty 6 territory. This land is a traditional meeting grounds, gathering place, and traveling route to many groups, including the Cree, Saulteaux, Blackfoot, Métis, Dene, and the Nakota Sioux. I also want to acknowledge all the Indigenous peoples of the lands that you're all meeting from, since we're on a virtual platform and it covers many different lands and territories. So this land acknowledgement is not just to reaffirm my commitment and respect to the Indigenous lands that I reside on, but also to improving relationships with Indigenous peoples and all members of marginalized groups who share the land that we call home. We can make an effort in our own lives to amplify the voices of women and female identifying friends and peers, and maybe bring the world a little bit closer to more inclusive and equitable that can benefit all people. I'm also hoping that during the event today, all of our youth participating can be inspired to take action in their own lives for women and women identifying friends. Now, before we get started, I wanted to make sure that I welcomed all the schools that were here. As I said, we do have lots of international schools that were able to join us today, as well as a few of our friends in Canada. And I wanted to give you guys a couple reminders. So during the event, we're going to have 2 speakers. We do have a youth perspective from our friend Sarah, who's going to give you a little bit of her background with our Youth Advocacy Council. And we, of course, have our amazing guest speaker, Andrea, who's going to be speaking as well. But we will hopefully have a little bit of time at the end of the event for some Q&A. So if you have any questions for either of our speakers, you're welcome to type them in the chat at any time, and we'll make sure we get to them before we log off. Or if you are able to turn on your cameras, we would also love to have you ask your question out loud if that's something you're comfortable with doing. And as well, to our friends on YouTube, you are also more than welcome to type your questions in the chat, and my colleague Sarah is more than happy to pass them along to us. Okay, you did not come here to have me do Women's Day trivia. You came here to hear from some great speakers. So I would like to first welcome our guest speaker, Sarah Golding. Sarah, a 17-year-old student at Pickering College in Newmarket, Ontario, has been a member of the UNESCO Student Youth Council for 2 years and has taken an active role in committees and youth councils for her school and local community. She's passionate about travel, sports, camping, photography, and beachcombing, with aspirations to study life or health sciences at university next year. So I would like to pass the microphone over to Sarah to go ahead and get us started with our youth perspective for today's event. She might be frozen. Is she frozen? Oh no. Okay, one moment. I'm gonna remove her, and maybe if she logs back in, well, that's too bad. Her internet was being a little bit weird when she first logged in. Okay, perhaps then maybe we will pass the microphone over to Andrea first, and then when she comes back in, we'll get the youth perspective from our youth speaker. So I'm actually going to invite to speak first. One moment. I have a slide for you as well, Andrea. Our guest speaker. Okay, so Andrea Cáceres, and I hope I said it right, is originally from Mexico, growing up between Mexico, Peru, Canada, and Spain. Her global upbringing fueled her passion for tackling global issues such as climate change, water scarcity, and gender equality. She's currently studying international development in Madrid, and her active participation in global conferences such as the UN Youth Assembly underscores her dedication to global change. Through her NGO, the AWA Project, Andrea empowers young leaders worldwide to engage in impactful water initiatives. Earning recognition from the government of Peru for her volunteer work, Andrea exemplifies the important role of young women leaders in creating an impact in the world. So welcome, Andrea.
Oh, thank you so much. I was just turning on my microphone. Thank you, everyone. Super exciting to be here. I have hopefully an engaging presentation. What I hope to do today is just share a little bit about my story, share a little bit about my experiences, but most importantly, also learn from you. So I'm just gonna share my screen, and if you can let me know with a thumbs up that it's okay. Awesome, amazing. So I think with Rebecca's introduction, we all know what we're doing here today. We're here in International Women's Day. And as I said, I want this presentation presentation to be as interactive as possible with you all. So if you have any questions, anything you would like to add throughout the presentation, please feel free to put it in the chat or just shout, and I'll happy to listen to your thoughts. But also if Rebecca and Sarah can help me to see what's on the chat, because I don't think I can see it while sharing my screen. But okay. Rebecca already made a quick introduction about me. I'll add a few things maybe important to me. She mentioned that I was born in Mexico and have the opportunity to live in different countries. And a very important aspect of my identity is being Latina and a woman of color, which I hope to share a little bit about how those two identities have shaped who I am today, but also where I envision as I move forward in my life. I'm right now currently in Madrid, Spain, so about 6 hours of difference with our folks in Canada, well, in the Ontario region. And I'm going to be sharing a little bit about my NGO, the Our Project, and how we're working towards gender equality through water, but also other initiatives I've been able to engage with when it comes to women and people who identify as women as well in very diverse forms. So, okay. I know that I said that we all know why we are here, but I do believe that International Women's Day can mean so many things to so many different people. So I want you to take a moment, if you want, speak up, write in the chat on why do you think that we are here today? Where does this event exist? Why are we here? Why are we coming together to share our thoughts about this day? And this can so many different things. We know that there's a recognized date of the UN, but why are you here today? What do you want to learn? So I'm just gonna give you a moment. Maybe if you want to speak up, share a little bit about, please feel free to write in the chat or just open your mic. There's a comment that it says, yeah, I think it's about a woman in my life who impacted me. Obviously, women around us are ones who are creating inspiration around us. It's celebrating women's and their achievements. That's amazing. I think it can be so many things, but I first wanted to ask you about the question, and I'm gonna give you a little hint of what's coming next. I took this same question and I asked the same question to different women in my life, and they wanted to share their answers with you and also give a little message to all of the young generations that are here today. And it's also about someone in the chat also added from North Park School, thinking about how we can further equality, equity in our generation. It is about empowerment. Awesome. Recognizing amazing women around me and the opportunity to learn from them, hearing stories from other places. That's awesome. And I think to bring that also for you. Okay. So now that we've kind of shared our perspective, I want to bring the perspective of other women in my life and for them to tell you a message.
International Women's Day means to me an opportunity to raise awareness on the issues that women face in my local context, but also to understand the many issues that affect women around the world. At the same time, it's also an opportunity to foster sorority and a sense of solidarity amongst many women with different identities, as well as other people that are also fighting for our struggles.
Der Weltfrauentag bedeutet für mich die Kraft, das Durchhaltevermögen und die Schönheit der Frauen auf der Welt zu feiern und zu zelebrieren und zu gratulieren.
International Women's Day is a day to celebrate the achievements of women and girls across the globe, while also recognizing and fighting against the obstacles and injustices that women face in today's society.
International Women's Day means to me that I have the choice to do whatever I want and to make my own choices the way that I want to.
For me, International Women's Day is all about community, taking care of each other, protecting each other, and remembering the ones that sadly are not here with us, and remembering the fights we have still for the future.
For me, International Women's Day is about reminding all of the fellow women in my life, my peers, my colleagues, my family members, my role models, about the role that they've played in my life in supporting me and mentoring me into the person that I am today.
Women's Day means to me is about empowering young women to care for the environment, and we can do that by educating them on how important our role is in caring for nature.
Hi everyone, my name is Helen Bachon, and I am an apprentice, una aprendiz.
My name is Sofia, and I am empowered.
Hallo,
Respetar a la persona que tenemos a un lado, al otro lado, y no hay que olvidar que todos tenemos los mismos derechos.
My message to young women out there is be brave. Be brave to take care of our environment at a time where fear may get the better of us. Just take care of the environment and always stand for what you believe in. And eventually, if we educate ourselves, we can educate others about the benefits and the challenges that we face in the environment. So for young women out there, always believe in yourself and don't be afraid to do what's right.
And the message that I would like to share with younger generations is that you're enough, your dreams are worth fighting for, and you are not alone as you navigate how to make those dreams possible.
If I were to have one message for all of you, it would be that any effort goes a long way. International Women's Day is not just about recognizing the big programs and policies that are in place, but it's also about maybe sitting down with a friend and helping them out, or sitting down with a student who's younger than you to talk them through the different challenges they're going through in their life. But it's about empowering all of the women around you, and that can be anything from a big policy or program all the way down to just an individual interaction. And I would challenge all of you to go out and do something that supports another woman today.
我想对你们说，请永远相信你的价值，同时也要帮助别人，让他们知道他们的价值。 每个巨大的变化都是从小小的努力开始的。你今天所做的一切，不管多小，都是向着能让每个人都被公平对待的世界迈进的一步。勇敢的去追梦，因为这个世界需要听见你的声音。
If you don't see any change, then start it. Be the change. You are more than capable and more powerful than you think, and you can create change. So if you don't see change and you're tired, then be the change.
Amazing. So that's the little message that different women in my life are bringing to you today. And as you've heard, wow, so many diverse experiences, so many diverse descriptions, so many diverse expectations to what International Women's Day should be. And this is just a moment to encourage yourself that there's no one single definition or no one single rule in which we should commemorate International Women's Day. I know Rebecca already made a very interesting and cool trivia about the history, so I'm pretty sure that you already know about it. So I won't spend long in the history of why we're here today. But what I want to bring to you is that for many years, women all over the world have been fighting for gender equality. While the recognition of the UN was as to a response towards labor women movements in North America and Europe, it's important that we also bring into conversation other women and feminist movements throughout the world, such as those happening in Latin America, the Caribbean, the Middle East, Asia, Africa, and as well the role of Indigenous women to make us understand that gender rights are not equal to everyone. Gender rights needs to be accommodated to our own identities. Yes, we have a similarity, which is being a woman or people who identify as women. But what makes us different? We also need to think about nationality. We need to think about race. We need to think about experiences. We need to think about ethnicity, culture, language, so many things. So as in history, we have not been able to listen to all of these stories. I think today it's important that we create an effort to make sure that we're listening to those who have not been who we have not been able to hear for history. And as well, International Women's Day is celebrated different around the world. Some groups of women, for example, some women in the video celebrated so much and being so grateful about women in their life and what they have been able to learn from them. Other women take this day to recognize that there are still injustices and violence in the world. And what can we start doing today to make awareness about these issues? So first of all, I know there's a lot of expectations when it comes to International Women's Day. How should I behave? Who should I be telling Happy International Women's Day? Who should I be having conversations? And this is a step-by-step process. And make sure that what you are deciding to do today is the right path towards you. But make sure that you're also listening to what other people around you are doing. An important aspect for me, for example, International Women's Day has been shaped a lot by my experience as a Latina woman. And historically, I have not always seen Latina women being represented in movements when it comes to women and gender rights. So I wanted to introduce you the Maribal sisters. These sisters are key in the fight for gender, but as well democracy in Latin America. And these are an example for me on how we need to make sure that Latina women's voices are encouraged and included within International Women's Day, but in our overall fight towards human rights. The Maribal sisters, known as Patria, Minerva, and Maria Teresa, those were their names, were known as the butterflies because of their transformative change towards democracy, but as well to gender equality in the Dominican Republic. Unfortunately, because such a brave way in which they stood up against an unfair treatment from a government and as well as society, they were sadly killed in November 25th of 1960. Due to their courage, the UN actually has recognized November 25th as a day to say no to violence against women, in recognition of the work of Latin American women. But for example, for me, it was about 3 years ago where I really learned about this date, being a Latina woman, not knowing exactly how our community has affected history. And I just bring them as an example. The Maribal sisters show how powerful Latina voices can be for fighting human rights. And I encourage you to fight women in your own community that are doing the same and have historically shaped how we understand International Women's Day. But again, I think, as I've been telling you, I talk a lot about my identity. I talk about being a woman. I talk about being Latina. I talk about being a woman of color, a Spanish speaker, and so much more. And for example, this is me in March 8th of 2022, 2 years ago. 84 years later, the Maribal sisters were sadly passed away because of violence from a government. 84 years later, a Latina woman like me, a Latina woman like them, continue to fight for gender equality in my region in Latin America, but as well around the world. And this is how I want to start my story. As I bring you here, I know it's maybe not going to be a usual presentation that you get in these days, but I really want to get personal. Because for me, the personal is not only political, but the personal is the only way in which you will be able to have deep conversations that can create transformative change. And this is where I start. This is my story as a woman. This is my story as an immigrant. And this is my story as a young leader. And I hope that this story might seem interesting, might seem relevant, might seem just as an example of how someone like me was able to achieve some change in their community. So I'm going to start. As I said, I want to share my story as a woman, but I'm 100% sure, and I would never tell my story as a woman if I don't talk about the woman in my family. So my story as a woman starts with them. I mentioned that I'm from Mexico. I lived in Peru, in Spain, in Canada, but well, going back to where I was born, after several years in Mexico, my family then decided to move to Peru. And my mother's side of the family, they're all Peruvian. So it was a very exciting and very unique moment of change, fear. But I remember me arriving to a house where I was living with 4 generations of women. It was me, my mother, my grandmother, and my great-grandmother, with a lot of more people. We were like 11 in the same house. A very fun time for me as a young kid. But it is until now that I reflect upon the privilege that I had to be in a house with different generation of women. The woman that I am today is because of them. The woman I am today is because of a great-grandmother that sang to me in Quechua. Quechua is an indigenous language from Peru. Usually, communities that are in the Andes of Peru speak this language. But what happens in our country and what happens in many Latin American countries? When rural communities move to the cities, to urban areas in order to look for more opportunities, usually they stop speaking their indigenous language, like the Quechua language. Many reasons: for discrimination, because there's not enough community to continue to maintain your culture, and because you want to assimilate. So Spanish is greatly spoken in the capital of Peru, but what does that mean? That we lose a lot of our culture and ability. And for me, it was such a privilege, and now I recognize, of a great-grandmother that spoke to me in indigenous language, that many people in the capital city decide to stop talking for many reasons. So for me, that really impacted my life, and I do believe that she was the last woman in my family that spoke this indigenous language. Secondly, I have my grandmother. The woman that I am today is also because of a grandmother that taught me how to help my community. My grandmother was one of the first persons that took me to volunteering, that took me to make parks in my community, that took me to other experiences and connected me with other young people that have a different reality that I had, in order to understand what was my capability, but of others, to create change together. And thirdly, the woman that I am today is because of a mother that showed me how brave it is to choose to do the things that you love. My mother is a dancer. My mother is an artist. Obviously, she faced different challenges that did not let her professionally develop in this area, but she constantly puts this as a priority in her life. And what an empowering move for her on a society that constantly tells her, stay at home with your kids, do not work. Your priority is to be a mother. And for her to say, no, my priority is myself. My priority is my passion. And those are the main 3 women who make the woman that I am today. But obviously, I can talk about the amazing things that these women have influenced on my life. But to be honest, these women have also faced different adversities and continue to face them. But it's because of this fight that they have been able to create more opportunities for women like me, younger generations like you. These are women that have also stood up for their rights. My great-grandmother was in Peru, where women could not even vote. And she experienced the whole election process, seeing that from the minute she was born, she was not able to participate politically, to now, unfortunately, she passed away after 104 years old, seeing her great-granddaughter participating in her community. They faced gender discrimination and violence. Latin America, unfortunately, has a history in which women are looked at objects. Women are expected to leave everything to stay at home. women are limited in their possibility to create change and speak their voice. These women have also been forced to leave their country because of conflict. My family was in Peru in the 1990s, where there was an internal conflict. My family experienced violence that made them fled the country. Women in my family experienced violence that make a huge impact in their lives through trauma. They have defied stereotypes of single mothers. My mom, as a single mother, has defied the stereotype that she doesn't need a man next to her in order to thrive. She started working for the first time when she was 35 because there were expectations for her to stay at home because no one really around her embraced the opportunity that she could be the one leading the finances at home. And she was able to support all of my family, me and my brother. And because of these women and the challenges that they faced, they have created a better world, not only for me, and not only created an opportunity for me to be able to study, to be able to work, but also to continue to contribute to the world. But again, I mean, so many great things and so many challenges that I've been able to explore in my story as a woman. But this becomes even more complicated when I explore my story and my experience as an immigrant. I shared that I've moved around different countries, which has been amazing. I've been able to connect with women from all around the world. But again, I think identities are intersectional and are diverse. So when I especially, and I know lots of schools here are in Canada, migrating to Canada was a hard experience for me because unfortunately I received different discrimination and microaggressions that impacted my story as an immigrant, as well as creating an amazing community that helped me heal from that. But for example, I have been discriminated because of how I look, of how my hair looked before I had very curly hair, or how it looks now that it's a very short hair. I have faced aggressions when speaking in Spanish, for example, walking around Toronto. People have laughed at my accent when speaking English. My English is not perfect, but I do create that my accent is a form of resisting to all of these comments. I've been called exotic because I'm Latina, because I'm expected to dance everywhere where I walk into the room. Because I'm exotic, people don't take me seriously when I'm in serious environments. They've questioned my ability to be a leader, to create change, just because I'm a woman, just because I'm a woman of color, and much more. But I know this is maybe a bit of a negative note, but I think it's important to understand that there's a lot of work to still be done for women and gender rights, racial rights, ethnic rights, indigenous rights, so many more things. And it's important that we do not forget in this day of celebrating the injustices that continue to exist in the world. But I mean, all of these things that I've experienced, I think could have made my life going into many different ways. But for me, it was important to understand that as I shared these experiences of discrimination, maybe challenges that I faced as a woman of color, and an immigrant, I've also found a great community that not only experienced similar things than me, but we're doing the work to make sure that we are creating awareness, but as well educating people. As I grew up, I started to get more involved in my community, talking to different women. And what they told me and what I've heard and I've learned is that we need to understand gender in its intersection. And one of the most important things that we see today is climate change. And we need to continuously understand that because of climate change, we have the lack of resources such as water. And where the communities most impacted by the lack of water is usually children and women, because women in many areas of the world are responsible for getting water into their communities. So how do we make sure that when we talk about gender, we also talk about climate change? This is where the AGUA project comes from. So the AGUA project is an NGO that I founded with other 4 students from the University of Toronto in 2020, in the middle of the pandemic. Yeah, crazy idea for us. Our mission today is to create a global network of water change makers with a vision of promoting a world of equality between people and water. Our first project was implemented in Peru during the pandemic, where a community which was led by women, I'm just gonna go to the previous slide here, is the woman with the green jumper, is Susana Romani, is the leader of the community. This community led by women was facing water scarcity because of the pandemic. It's a rural community that was not connected to the national grid of water. And that impacted a lot, not only, for example, education, but women in every household in that community had to make the daily decision on whether to use the water for cooking, whether to use the water for hygiene, whether to use the water for plants and environment, whether to use the water to make sure that they continuously connect through their culture to the land, agriculture opportunities. And that's a decision that no one should have to make, but women all around the world were making. At the Hour Project, we hope to continue creating projects such as the one that we implemented, the fog catchers that you see in the picture, but we also want to educate young people on how to implement their own projects. And we're currently working with schools in Peru for them to be able to implement their own projects. And as I said, I think I've shown that change can only happen if it's collective. And this is the great team of directors that work with us. And as you can see, mostly of them are women who are so diverse, who comes from so many different backgrounds. But again, I think as we start getting to know community and we talk about gender, everyone brings their own perspective into the table. Well, here we're talking about water. There's so many things that our community brings when it comes to International Women's Day, but as well gender equality. We have a great volunteer who does poetry and public speaking and spoken word. We have volunteers that are so passionate about social media and creating awareness. We have volunteers who are making a podcast to better understand what is the impact of water in our world, and so much more. But again, water has been one of the aspects that I focus on my life. But another aspect that I've already touched upon in this conversation is gender-based violence. Today, we are in a world where, yes, we have achieved so many amazing things for women. We have been able to create so many opportunities in terms of education, in terms of the reduction of the gender pay gap, as Rebecca explained in the trivia at the beginning. But we continue to face all around the world different forms of violence. And this is where me and a group of friends in Toronto decided to create change. We created a movement that is called Vivir Sin Miedo, which translates to live with no more fear. In Latin America during the pandemic, because we were all in our houses, the percentage of gender violence in the house increased so much. Many people who continuously faced violence, and because we were everyone so disconnected, there were very few resources that helped the victims of these situations. As immigrants, I felt such frustration being in Canada and not being able to protest or just raise my voice against what was going back home. And when I started to talk about this with other young women in my life, I realized that it was not only me. A lot of Latina women felt the same. And we decided to get together and started to share our experiences. So Vivir Sin Miedo was born in need of change through a collective action. It was an initiative started with me and my two roommates of university. We are also a Latina woman. It is an initiative that started in our living room, us, for example, looking at everyone around us and not seeing any type of change about what is happening in regards to gender violence in the world. And today it is the third consecutive year in which communities in Toronto, Latino communities in Toronto, are coming together through art to express what we want to say to our community. So today, actually, if you guys are in Toronto, you might see a group of women in King's College Park, where they will be, for example, doing art, they will be singing, they will be connecting with the land to make sure that we create a space for immigrant women to share what they are carrying from their own experiences. But overall, I think I've talked too much. And I know I've shared a lot about my experience, which hopefully it has made change. But as my friends in the video shared with you a message, I also wanted to take some space and share a message with you. I know that you are all amazing young people who are gonna do amazing change, and that is a big responsibility. I was once in your position where people told me that I was the future of change. I think it's relevant to say that we are the now, we're the change now, not just in the future. And I'm gonna share 3 things that for me has been instrumental. So I recommend you to listen. The only way in which we will be able to create change is if we understand the people around us, and do not assume that your experience is the experience of everyone else. As I said, International Women's Day is not the same for everyone. So if we listen what others are thinking, is the only way in which we can come together. So listening will be your best skill. Empathy. as well, when you're talking with such diverse communities with so different experiences, it is important that you put yourselves in the shoes of others. It is important as well to yes, acknowledge your own experience, but what others are telling you, how can I receive it in a way when I can create trust, but I can also honor the vulnerability of other people when they're sharing me their stories. Empathy will be your best attribute, and courage. Courage is all you need to make change. I think when we talk about change, we talk about change in such like enormous terms. Sometimes change you expect, like, for example, a policy to be implemented or a big project to be implemented or a big change in society, for example, such as voting rights for women. But change can be small, change can be intimate. And being able and courageous enough to do that intimate space is the best strength that you will hone in your life. So yeah, that's it for me. Thank you so much for the space, Rebecca and everyone. I know there has been some discussion in the chat of, again, what people are sharing about their stories. So I'm happy to discuss more. And again, thank you so much.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for such a great personal story. I mean, that really had a big impact on me. So I'm assuming that all of the young women, young people joining today, I'm sure will also be thinking the same thing. I would like to point something out before I pass our microphone over to our youth speaker, who is having Wi-Fi issues, so we'll do our best. But I would like to point out there was a question in here that says, what is the most significant barrier to women's empowerment? And I want us actually all to maybe think about that while we maybe pass it over. Maybe she seems like she might be frozen again. Pass it over to our youth speaker, Sarah. But I would love to hear, we have some schools joining us from Peru. We have some schools with us here in Canada. I would love to hear a bit of a difference, because I'm sure depending on where we're at in the world, this might be a little bit different. So Andrea, I know that you kind of spoke to that a little bit already, but maybe just to get the ball rolling, would you like to speak to what do you think the most significant barrier is to women empowerment, at least in your country or one of the countries that you've lived in?
Yeah, maybe I'll talk, I mean, so many things that I could focus on, but I'm going to focus on environment and nature. I do believe that women, and Indigenous women especially around the world, carry a very important responsibility of taking care of our nature and our environment. As I shared, usually women are the one who take care of collecting water for their communities, and as well taking care of rivers, taking care of lakes, taking care of oceans. One of my friends in the video, she does coral restorations. She goes deep dive into the ocean to make sure that we save our nature. I think one of the biggest challenges is lack of representation and voices in this space. We talk so much about climate change, but are we really providing the space for women to talk about their experiences? They are the most affected by climate change, them and younger generations and children. We should be talking more about this. For me, as a leader of an organization focused on water, I want to make emphasis on this.
Yeah, I also love the connection between climate change and International Women's Day, because climate change does have such a big impact on like every single event that we do, but I do feel like it's something that's not spoken about enough. And in so many countries, those severe weather events and like the changing climate impacts women so much more than other people. So I love that you have a project that's working on that. And for the next one is kind of tied to that. What would success for your organization look like to you? Like what would be a successful organization in your eyes?
Oh, that's a great question. A question that I've been asking myself for the past 3 years. I mean, my organization is very young and very small, but I think the only way to know success is that if you have a clear objective. It's very difficult to measure success if you're not sure where you're going. So if anyone here is planning to implement their own project, I think the first thing that anyone has to do is really sit down with friends or whoever you want to make this project, and really define in a couple of sentences what you want to do. For example, our mission at the Hour Project is to create a world of equality between people and water. So my success would be when engaging with volunteers, we understand that we're not more than water. We're not more than environment. We're no more powerful than everything around us, but that we need to treat each other equally. As well as we like talk about treating people equally, we need to make sure that we treat the environment with the same respect. For me, success will make sure to create a global network of volunteers who have that mindset and who want to make change. But for you, it can be completely different. It depends on your objective when it comes to creating change.
Yeah, wonderful. That's like, I feel good about it. Like your project has just such a good focus and such a good like basis behind it. I think, I think it will be successful. Okay, Sarah, I see that you have joined us again. Would you like to try unmuting? I don't know how your Wi-Fi is doing right now. Or what if maybe if you try turning your camera off?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you, but you're very jittery. Can we try turning the camera?
Anything?
Maybe you might get a little bit better.
Anything right
Yep. No, it's not coming through clearly. Oh, this is too bad. Sarah's presentation is so beautiful and she worked so hard on it. I'm going to be so sad if we don't get to share it. Okay, Sarah, I think maybe we should try one more, maybe logging in from your phone instead of the school Wi-Fi. And as we try one last try to get her back on, I see another school here from the chat as well. I want to remind our schools joining on YouTube, if you have any questions or comments, please type them in the YouTube chat because we can see those, we can share them. This next one I like, what are ways that boys and men can be good allies? And as well, if anybody else joining, if you guys have thoughts about these, feel free to type them in the chat too. Because I know Andrea has great perspectives, but we've got a diverse group of women here today, so I would love to hear. So boys and men, what do you think? Ooh, and we do have YouTube coming through. Andrea, what do you think getting boys and men involved in?
I think anyone who wants to get involved, one of the first aspects in my last message that I shared is first to listen. I think that a day that commemorates a big group of our society, everyone has so many experiences, and it's easy to just come and say, oh, women all suffer this. All women experience this. All women have these opportunities. So as boys and men want to engage in these platforms, I think the best way is just listening to women around you. And also talk with your male boyfriends or non-women friends. What are they doing in your own group to make sure that you're creating equal opportunities for everyone? As I said, change involvement doesn't have to be big. You don't have to be shouting in the streets if you don't want. You don't have to be posting on social media if you don't want. But you can have meaningful conversations with your friends. Have you ever listened to someone to say something that maybe could offend someone or is not as respectful? I think those conversations are great ways in which other people who want to be part of this conversation can engage. But as you say, Rebecca, here are so many different experiences and diverse voices. So very happy to see what other people have been doing, maybe to engage with different groups of people.
Yeah, and I see a couple comments we have sharing social media posts that are empowering and not degrading. I do think when we hide behind social media, it's so much easier for us to be negative towards each other. And then the last one was learning about everyday things that women go through and having empathy for them. Like even just those everyday stories that you shared about your own family and how small everyday actions can be so empowering for you. I think that's great. Sarah, this internet looks great. I can see you.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you, yes.
It's the school Wi-Fi. It's
Yeah.
always the school Wi-Fi.
Oh, it is getting a little bit laggy.
Sarah, or something.
Can you try turning your video off and maybe your audio might come through a little?
Are you able to hear me?
Oh, okay, yeah, you're still there. I thought we lost you for a second.
Is this better?
Yes, that's much better.
Okay, perfect.
Would you be able to quickly send me the updated version of your presentation and I can just share it for you?
Yes, for sure.
And while she's doing that, I wanted to take this opportunity to quickly remind you guys of a few things. Since we are coming to the end of our time together, I don't want you guys to miss out on any. I have a couple reminders. So first off, we have another upcoming event. You know, we're kind of tying this into that idea of climate change and how climate change affects water and affects women around the world. We have another event aimed at our kind of junior high audience again on April 3rd for Zero Waste Day. We're going to be partnering with a few NGOs from across Canada that are going to be sharing different things that you can do to get involved in climate actions and reduce your waste around the world. If you would like to register for that, you can just visit our website at cgeducation.org. For some reason, Sarah, the way that you are sharing that with me, I cannot access it. It's making me sign into Microsoft. So maybe try a different way. I don't know. And then my other reminder, if you liked this event and you want to be involved in more events, if you want to be our student speaker who has to struggle with school Wi-Fi, sign up for our newsletter. If you're a teacher here and you want to get your students more involved in our events, sign up for our newsletter. I think I also have, I'll pop it in the chat as well for you so that you guys, in case you don't want to do the QR code. That's how you guys sign up for our newsletter. We've got kind of bigger projects coming up, some smaller projects like this, but lots of good stuff on there. And we'll see. Oh, Sarah's gone. I don't know, guys. I think we might have to call it and do our last questions. I think the best solution would be at this point is if I get Sarah to record her presentation and we send it out as a wrap up to the event, because I do really want you guys to see it. It's so beautiful and so good. I ran through it with her yesterday and it like literally gave me goosebumps. So last question before we go though. So Andrea, I have one last thing I wanted to ask you that came in the chat, which is kind of similar to the question that I would have had for you. What advice do you have for women? This one specifically, they're asking for women who want to work in a men-dominated field, but I would like to open it up to like, what advice would you have for women or women identifying people that are in this event today?
That's a great question, especially because I've worked in male-dominated experiences. I mean, today I'm in the first time that I'm in a classroom where 80% are women, which that for me has been not the reality for most of my life. But I think one of the things that for me was really hard is to trust myself. I think I've been surrounded by a society that sometimes tell you that because you're a woman, you are not able to do something. But let me remind you that even here or around you, there are groups and people that will 100% encourage you and make sure that you trust yourself, trust your instinct, trust that you're able to create change. I think for me, one of the hardest things to build in this organization is to trust as a young woman that I can actually do something, that people will actually hear me. So let me tell you, I am hearing you. I am listening to you. I am watching you and I will always support you. So I think that is what you can do as a woman. Continue to support each other, continue to listen, continue to empower, but most importantly, continue to trust yourself. Because I trust you and I know everyone here trusts you. I think that's kind of the biggest things that was very important for me as I grew up, and is something that I encourage everyone.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. And as well, there were a couple questions in the chat about getting involved in the AWA project. So if I could get my colleague Sarah to maybe transfer over the AWA project website over to our YouTube so that they are able to see that as well. I know we have a couple students, local high school and university students as well that are here that might want to be a little bit more involved in that. So for sure, check it out after this. And I just want to say one last thank you to everybody for coming out today. Thank you to Sarah for trying so hard to get your video and presentation working. I will make sure that we get that content and share it out to everybody that was here today. We'll put it up on our YouTube and our social media so that anybody that was hoping to see that will still get to see it. And thank you, of course, Andrea, for coming and sharing such a meaningful and personal story. And we wish you the best of luck with your project and your NGO moving forward. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. I left my email in the chat if anyone wants to connect. I'm very happy to continue discussions. And thank you so much for all of the interaction in the chat. Very grateful to be here and share my story.
Awesome. Wonderful. Okay. Thanks, everybody. Have a wonderful afternoon or evening, wherever you're joining from. It was nice to see you. Happy Women's Day. Go out and be great women. Bye-bye.